Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Logan Lyles. Logan is the former VP of Sales and Customer Experience at Sweetfish, now handles evangelism and content at teamwork.com. Logan has interviewed hundreds of agency owners and experts as the host of the podcast Agency Life and has countless insights from those conversations. For today's episode, we get into the findings from teamwork.com's Stated Agency Operations Report from 2023. I have added a link to the show notes so you can get a copy and follow along so that you can see what we're talking about. In this episode, we discuss how client expectations are changing and what to do about it, why agencies might struggle to keep projects on time and budget, the need for AI in agency workflows, and more. Today's episode is brought to you by ZenPilot. There are lots of tools out there for agencies to manage projects, but any project issues aren't usually caused by the tool, they're from your own processes. ZenPilot helps agencies implement their project management tools while streamlining operations so your team can move from chaos to clarity. You can see for yourself at ZenPilot.com. And now, Logan Lyles. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. Where do you see agencies moving strategically right now?
I think there are a few different plays there, Chris. And like you said, I have had the chance with our Agency Life podcast, as well as just a lot of networking at Inbound last year. I was able to, I think like 24 interviews we did with agency owners and agency leaders just in those couple of days in Boston last year. I'm looking forward to that event again this year. I think AI plays a role. The thing that keeps coming up on the podcast as I'm interviewing agency owners on Agency Life is really the business model, moving away from, hey, here's what we do. We offer these full suite of services, the full suite, end to end digital marketing agency. I have a few friends that I've talked to that are like, no, you still don't need to niche down. You still don't need to, go super narrow. But I think that pressure is only going to continue. As you and I were just chatting earlier today about how AI is impacting the way that agencies are creating content and doing work, more and more things are going to be commoditized. So I think it's, how are you going to leverage AI? How are you going to productize and sell your IP? How are you going to get paid for the strategy? It's interesting. Just I was interviewing Max Trailer here recently for the podcast. I don't think his episode's out yet, but he was saying, so many agencies are not able to sell the strategy. They're only able to sell the deliverables. Give me the deliverables, da, da, da. At the same time, in my time in helping lead an agency and the agency owners I talk to, the agency clients are like, we want more strategy from our agency. We don't just want a button pusher. We don't just want cheap labor. Like, we can get that anywhere from Fiverr to the AI tools or whatever the case is. So I think it's somewhere in this interplay of, what is the business model, getting away from just delivering services and getting paid for strategy, and monetizing your IP, probably leveraging AI. So I think I don't know what all the answers are to how those come together, but those are some of the factors that keep kind of rising to the surface that I think are going to play a major role in what the future of agencies look like.
Yeah, I think that sentiment has been echoed by nearly everyone. It's like, get more strategic, right? Like and I've said it before, so I'm sure listeners are going to be annoyed with it at this point, but like, agencies get to see problems more frequently than like a standard business. Like, you get to see that one problem on that one page of your website one time, and you get to run a test, but you can't run another test until that one concludes. Otherwise, you're going to interfere with the test, right? If I'm running an agency, I can see that same problem across all of my clients right now and go run different tests to see, based on the hypothesis, to see what's actually going to work. It's like, you can learn much faster, which means strategically, I should be able to see the patterns way faster than anyone else.
Yeah, I think surfacing those patterns is a big thing. That's why I love what Pete Caputa and his team over at Databox are equipping a lot of agencies to do with their benchmark groups. We had Chris Nault on from Growth on the podcast, and he was talking about how they spun up a benchmark group with Databox's free tool and how that just accelerated their sales process, because what they were able to do was to get a bunch of customers and prospects into this benchmark group, look at the data across even just a couple dozen customers, but they were all, similar size, in the same industry, I think manufacturing and industrial. And I think the trust between the clients and the agencies is something that agency leaders have to think about. How are we going to address the trust issue? Because we're all more skeptical. I mean, heck, OpenAI just announced a couple months back now their Sora product that allows you to just go from text to AI generated video that looks like real video, right? And it's only going to get better. And so I think overall, we're more skeptical, we're less trusting. And so how does that play into the client agency relationship? It means if I'm hiring your agency, Chris, I'm like, how can I trust that the advice you're giving me is good? How can I trust that what you say you're going to deliver, you're going to deliver? How can I trust that what you say you're going to deliver is actually going to deliver the results, not just the deliverables, right? But the actual results that I'm looking for. And I think that leveraging data, leveraging testing across your customer base, and then being able to show that data to your client to say, look, you're outperforming the average of these 30 other companies that look just like you. That can be, a major lever to pull there to put the trust, in your favor and not working against you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the pieces, having that data to be able to kind of prove out the patterns that you're seeing can go huge. It's a great conversation starter too, where like I have seen tons of patterns for B2B tech and SaaS companies, but like me going in and saying like, oh yeah, I've seen this before, versus me saying like, hey, look at this data that we've collected, right? That shows exactly what I'm telling you right now. That can go a long way. And actually, if anyone wants episode 1 of our podcast, Pete and I got into the importance of doing benchmark reports. And it's great lead gen source, but also it really positions you as an expert for your space. And so why would you not do it?
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're probably going to get to some of the points from this report, but it wasn't a benchmark report. But last fall, we released our State of Agency Operations report from teamwork.com. And the responses that we got from people leaning in and saying, well, what does that mean for us? As opposed to just saying, hey, we have thousands of agency customers that run on our platform. We talk to agencies on our podcast every week, But we were able to say, hey, we surveyed over 500 agencies. Here's what they said on this point. Them leaning in and saying, okay, now I'm listening, was just different, to your point about leveraging this data. So we saw it, as a SaaS company as well. Speaking to agencies, I think agencies can follow the same model, whether they're doing an industry report like we did, or they're following Pete's advice and using, their free tool at Databox with the benchmark groups. Same kind of principle applies, I think, in both situations.
Well, and the State of Agency Operations report is going to guide a lot of our discussion today. And so let's just jump right into it. One of the pieces that I wanted to pull out first is 44% of agencies say client expectations have become more challenging. I thought that was interesting, where you would assume things are getting easier to manage. We've got all these project management tools. We've got more tech to be able to help us get the job done. We've got teams who can be trained faster, right, and brought up to speed just on really any problem that we see with our clients. But so what about that kind of makes the expectation part from clients increase rather than decrease?
I think there's two parts to it. I think the first part is just kind of the age-old client and vendor or agency relationship, which we kind of pulled on that thread, or maybe even poked that bruise here recently at teamwork.com. We posted our quote unquote movie trailer, The Client. If you haven't seen it yet, maybe we can link to it in the show notes here, or just check out teamwork.com on LinkedIn. It's our pinned post right now, but it was this movie trailer with a supervillain, without giving too much away, but the supervillain is quote unquote the the client, and he's doing all the things that, when it comes to client expectations that agencies just know is true, coming back with changes after stuff has been approved, hey, got the work, it's completed. This is a good start, right? I want good, fast, and cheap. Don't tell me to pick two. All of those things have happened since we've been delivering services to any sort of client. And so I think the reason that video got, over 500 reposts, is in the tens of thousands of views organically on LinkedIn just after being out a week, is because we kind of touched a nerve there, that client expectations, there's always been a dynamic, and there always will be, of kind of misaligned client expectations. And I think, I've heard people say that most interpersonal problems in life come from mismanaged or unmet expectations. And so when you're thinking about an agency, it's all about the people. It's all about the interaction with the client. It's always those nuances of expectation. So I think part of it is just in-laden, right? Number two, though, I think clients look at kind of what you alluded to, Chris. You have all these tools. You're supposed to be an expert. You have AI tools that we don't know how to use yet, but you should be using those to make you more efficient. Those sorts of things. And so I think that is kind of raising client expectations. And maybe part of it too is, as we got out of the kind of boom, especially in SaaS in 2020, 2021, 2022, and things kind of came back to reality a little bit, the clients are like, I'm getting more pressure to be more efficient. So that's going to trickle down to higher expectations on you as an agency, whether it's rooted in reality or not, or whether it's just coming from, hey, I'm getting pressure, so I'm going to apply the pressure. So I think those are the two reasons I think client expectations are becoming more challenging. If I had to sum it up in two.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some, now that money is not as free flowing, and people actually have to pay attention to their P&Ls a little closer. I can definitely see how that impacts agencies. So next metric here, 33% of agencies struggle to keep projects on time and on budget. That one actually surprises me. Just given.
Why does that one surprise you more, Chris?
So given all of the information out there, all of the tools out there to be able to do all of this, the access to coaches even, and things like that, I feel like that should be something very easy to manage. And maybe I'm like blowing it out of proportion because my experience before agency life was in the Army as an infantry officer, and they drill it into our heads that you are as an infantry officer, you are a master of synchronizing assets in time and space. And it's because you have to, right? I have to make sure that when these bombs drop, I don't have soldiers standing below them. They're off to the side and then they come in. And so we have to manage all these different pieces all at once. And so managing a project for agencies was usually pretty easy for me. So maybe I'm just like misunderstanding some of these pieces, but I guess what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of folks living agency life, whether they're project managers or operations leaders, or they're kind of on the front end doing the client work, a designer, a developer, whatever the case might be. I think a lot of them don't come from that background that you have on kind of the extreme organization and literally the life and death consequences of not being completely organized and synchronized, as you put it. And I think, we see this too with some of our customers that run their agency on teamwork.com. They're just kind of using the task list. They're saying, okay, let's keep track of what we need to do next, right? And I've heard from some of our top solution partners and some of our customers that are really getting the most out of the platform. They're using it to manage what we call the entire client work lifecycle. How do we plan the work? How do we do the work? How do we resource the work? And then how do we report on it? It's all of those things combined together that actually help you keep things on time and on budget. It's not simply just, okay, Chris, you're going to do this and I'm going to do this. Well, Chris, are you at capacity? What if I add this task to your list, right? Do you have capacity to do that? How long is that going to take you? Right. And so if people are using kind of basic task or project management without time tracking and resource management to look at capacity and be able to look at the data through kind of a different lens, then I think that it is actually very easy for things to run off the rails and things to get, not on time and on budget because they're not kind of managing the full life cycle of the client work. Now, here's the good news. Everybody, every agency, every professional service firm, that client work life cycle is the same. You got to win the business, you got to plan it, you got to resource it, you got to deliver it, you got to report on it, right? And so if you can put the right tools in place that help you see that as, okay, this is the same thing. Like, yeah, it feels like a hamster wheel, but we're still running right on the same parts of the wheel. So let's make it repeatable. And the number of agencies I see that, whether they're running on our platform or another tool for project management or something like that, that aren't using templates to document, hey, here's our standard operating procedure, here's our steps for onboarding. Like, there's still so many things that are just kind of lost in the ether of Slack and email and Google Docs, where they're not managing it, in one system where they can do all of those things, not just the task management, but everything related to the full client work lifecycle. That's where, a lot of things are running off the rails.
Right. And so I would say I'm guessing that most agencies have a tool, right, of some sort to be able to track this. So if we take it a step back, a lot of them don't have the necessary skills to be able to use that tool to its fullest capacity. And then a step back from that, they don't have the right mindset to be able to actually even approach, how are we tracking this stuff? How are we looking at our workloads in order to identify the right skills that they need in order to make sure they have the right tool? Yeah, I think that's probably that critical piece that's missing, right? Like, how are we thinking about this problem?
Yeah, you just reminded me of something there, Chris. I think the skills to be able to leverage the tools to then deliver the client work on time and on budget. And it comes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with managing client expectations. I was having a conversation just last week on the podcast about some of the mistakes that often lead to over servicing. Because I think another stat from the report that really stood out to me was 38% of agencies say that they're either commonly or frequently over servicing clients, meaning they feel like they're delivering more than what was promised, whether it's on paper or not. There's scope creep, right? To use the dreaded two words in agency life. And in that conversation with Allison Caffrey on the podcast, we were talking about some of the mistakes that lead to over servicing. And a lot of it does have to do with managing those client expectations. Like, we don't step back from even using the tool like teamwork.com or some other tool to manage your client work, but how are you managing the client relationship? When you deliver an asset, do you say, let us know what you think? Or do you give them a rubric? Do you give them examples of, here's the sort of feedback we're looking for. Here's how it would be great to give us that feedback. And here's the kicker, especially related to this topic of on time and on budget. Here's when I need your feedback by to keep things on track. Oftentimes these things just go like, we have to go and present to the client, and then we have to go back and have our internal meeting. Oh gosh, this is delayed to 2 weeks because they didn't show the project to the CEO until now. They came back with revisions. This is their 4th round. Well, did you tell them how many revisions they had included? Did you tell them what the turnaround time was for each revision? Did you tell them that, everybody who has veto power on this piece of creative needed to be on that presentation call? Well, no. Well, no wonder it's not on time and on budget, because you're not managing the client expectations in a proactive way, let alone documenting those procedures in your project management tool and kind of getting to the next level of what we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Right. Something we did, there are a bunch of great things we did at Lean Labs to help facilitate the management of client expectations. But one of them was just when presenting whatever asset, we would first say landing page, right? We start from the top landing page. We do a slow scroll so they would see it. And if we're either doing this live or delivered via video, but slow scroll, then go back to the top and say, all right, this is what we built. And we just talk through what we built through that landing page. And we go back to the top. This is why we built it. And we go back through, and then back to the top. This is why we love it. And then only then do we now say, all right, let's get some feedback. And if the client doesn't have feedback, you start asking very pointed questions at everything, but you're usually able to get that feedback way faster now because they understand your whole thinking around the process, which I think is something a lot of agencies struggle with. They just say, here's the asset. And it's like, yeah, but like show them you're the expert. Show
Yes.
them you strategically thought through this. Because if you couldn't, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that word up. It comes back to strategy. If you want to be valued for and hopefully eventually paid for your strategy, you have to present it that way. But the good news is it's already there. You know what you built, you know why you built it, and you know why you love it. I love that framework, Chris, of being able to just think about that rubric when you're presenting to a client. I also love the slow scroll, because how many times have you presented something, whether it's a campaign brief or a landing page or something to a client, you start walking them through from the top to bottom, and then you spend 30 minutes have been wasted on the font on this one button in the top, and you haven't even gotten to everything else.
Right.
And so now the client is frustrated because it's not a good experience. Like they've been waiting for this and they feel like they've gotten mired in the details. The agency is frustrated because they're like, the client doesn't value our strategic insights. They're, hemming and hawing over the font on this one button. Well, it's because of the way that you set it up. You've got to take that ownership. Right. And I think that framework that you just laid out is a great way to do that. Similarly, when I led the customer experience team at Sweetfish, podcast production agency I was part of for 4 years, I tried to train our account managers. There's a difference between a reply and a response. I was talking to Eric Huberman at Hawk Media, and he was saying they actually took some AI and analyzed all of the accounts that churned from their agency, and responsiveness rose to the top as the number one determining factor, or contributing factor, I should say, to when and why clients left them. And I think a lot of that is, you get a response from a client. And as we've been talking about in agency life, because it's service, it's not a product, there's always these nuances. And what I saw from young account managers on our agency team, they would not respond because they didn't have the full response. And my framework for them was always reply quickly, right? Reply with message received. Just like when you submit a support ticket somewhere, what do you instantly get? Here's your case number, and it's templated, right? But you have that peace of mind of, I've been heard, it's in the system, it's tracked, and maybe it tells me like the time frame in which I'm going to get an actual response. The same thing goes for agency clients. You need to give them that quick reply, even if it is, Chris, that's a great question. I'm going to have to talk to 2 people, and it's going to take me a week to get you a full response, to which you'll reply, oh, sweet. Okay. And then you come back in 4 days and you underpromise, overdeliver, and they're feeling great. Versus I go back and I have to find the answer, and it takes 4 days, and the client's sitting there like, what's been going on for 4 days with this simple question? It's little things like that in managing the client relationship that I think seem basic, but a lot of agencies just putting standard operating procedures behind those, and the training and the way that you interact with clients can go a long way in this over servicing, keeping things on time and on budget, and managing these rising client expectations.
Yeah. Well, going back to over servicing clients, one of the other numbers was that 56% of agencies are doing that to keep clients happy. And so, like, I guess I'm curious why just delivering great results for them isn't enough to keep them happy, right? Like, what are you not doing that causes you to think like over servicing is what's required?
I think sometimes it's a lack of clarity. I see a lot of agency proposals and talk to a lot of agency owners where, the delivery team is going back to the sales team and saying, is this in scope or not? Like, that needs to be documented somewhere, because if it's not, then everybody's set up to fail. The person who sold the deal, the client who's receiving the work, and the delivery team that's delivering on the work. And I think that there was something, another one agency owner I was just talking to the other day. I know what it was. Oftentimes, I see account managers and folks that are on the front lines of agencies. They get requests from clients, and it's almost like they have this expectation that anything the client asks for, I just need to do, and I need to bite the bullet, and I need to bend over backwards. And some of that is cultural, like the client's always right, or these sorts of things. But there's not this culture built in to say, yeah, we can do that, but it's going to cost more, or it's going to change the timeline, and so I think the account management skills, not to harp on this too much, but going back to that is really the root of a lot of these problems where the agencies feel like they have to over deliver just to meet expectations when the client's just like, not all requests are created equal, I think is the best way I would say it. Like a client may ask something, but they don't take the time to say, I know this isn't in scope, but could we do this? It's not a big deal, da da da. So asking those clarifying questions of like, is this a deal breaker for you? Were you understanding this to be part of the scope? Or, is this less important? Or is this something you'd really like to have, but you'd be willing to pay more for? Eric Sue at Single Grain was a guest on the podcast, and he was saying they ran this process of three $0 change orders. So if a client came with a request and it was out of scope, sure, I'll do that. I'm going to write up a change order for $0 and send that to you so we have a record of it. Second time, do the same thing. Third time, hey, we've done 2 out of scope things. This third one, we'll do it, but here's the price that's going to be attached to it, right? And you could even set expectations that first time of like, hey, we've got a policy, like we've got some flex, we've got some things built in that we understand. We're going to go beyond the scope of what's on paper here and there. Here's how we walk through it together. And now when the client gets that third one and there's a price attached to it, and they've known that's coming, then everybody's happy. The agency feels like they're getting paid for the extra work. The client is clear that they've asked for extra work and they knew that extra invoice was coming. And I think so often it's not so much that they're, as much as we poked fun with the client video and the supervillain, the client that just, wanted to run the agency into the ground. Most clients aren't like that, but we can perceive if we don't ask some clarifying questions that, oh gosh, we just got to do this and we got to do that and we got to do that. Of course, there are those clients that are going to slack us at 3 a.m. on a Sunday and something like that. Those situations set aside, oftentimes you're dealing with very reasonable people. You just need to ask some more clarifying questions and flex those account management skills more often than we are.
Right. That episode with Eric was actually very good and got me thinking. That was something we did at Lean Labs as well, with zeroing out some invoices, but making sure anytime we had some of these, this additional scope, but we were willing to accept it, we still sent an invoice and then we'd zero everything out. So the client still knew, hey, this is taking them time and they're actually giving this to us. And so like that goes a long way with the client, just seeing it and getting in the habit of seeing these things come through. But something else I want to bring up, I wonder how much just how you address any scope creep can actually set you up as an expert. Like I'm wondering this. I know this has a tremendous impact. So if you bring me something and say like, hey, we'd love it if we could add this, but me being able to come in and say, well, actually that doesn't advance us towards the goal that we agreed on, right? We have this strategy that we set in place. We're confident that it's going to get us there. We'd still love to do this, but let's save it for the end of the project. We can run this as a different project. If you still think it's something important to you right now, like, yeah, we can talk about getting this scoped and we can, send you an invoice for it, or maybe we do just eat the cost because we want to do that for you. But really our goal is this. And we've kind of said, this is the path to get there.
Yes.
And so we're going to follow that path. And now the client gets to lean on you as that strategic expert, right? And say, okay, well, they know what they're doing, right? They wouldn't have pushed back if they didn't.
It's the opposite of the situation we're talking about, where there's this frustration building, where you feel like I'll use your words just there, Chris, of the client leaning on you. At first, it feels like the client is leaning on you, like pressuring you, like do this. Here's another demand. Here's another demand. Da 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 da. Instead, you want to flip that script, so they're leaning on you for support, for guidance. Right? You're becoming a Sherpa, not just again that button pusher. And it comes back to strategy. I'm glad you brought that up, because there's one clarifying and saying, hey, timeout. This is out of scope. Here's how we could handle it. But what I didn't address in the last 5 minutes is what you brought up, which is even more important. Wait, why do you want to do this? Right? Why? Just asking that question of, what do you think this is going to drive? Oh, well, I thought if we took that same video and we posted it over here, we'd get some more engagement. Well, actually, I can tell you from the data of our 30 other clients, the data shows me that tactic actually hasn't been working. What about this tactic? It would cost more, da 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 da. Now they know that extra request is going to cost more. And two, they feel better about spending that money because it's not just because it was out of scope, but it's something that you've brought them that will actually lead to greater results. So that's a fantastic addition right there, Chris. I think that is something that you know agency folks listening to this do not want to miss.
Right. So I got one more metric that I've pulled. I mean, there's a lot of great metrics. We're going to get the state of agency operations report. We're going to get that linked up in the show notes for everybody. But this one piece actually has me baffled. So 50% of agency leaders believe their agencies are 100% on board with AI. It's like only 50% of agencies are on board or believe that their teams are on board with AI. Mm-hmm. Why 50%?
You know, this stat brings to mind a conversation I had with Jay Owen at Business Builders. They've had a HubSpot agency for, I don't know how long. I know it's 10 plus years, maybe 20. Very successful agency out of Florida. He's since started to build a community, I think Agency Builders. They do a retreat, I think in Jacksonville every spring. And Jay was telling me this was maybe from last year in 2023, because I think they just wrapped up this year's, but they were sitting around talking and someone had sent in a resume or cover letter job application to work at one of the agency owners' agencies. And he showed it to the people sitting around, the other agency owners, and was like, I think this was written by AI. And they were like, I don't know, kind of looking into it. And, you know, for whatever reason, they were like, oh yeah, I think ChatGPT wrote this. And that group was actually split. Half of them were like, this is plagiarism. This is lazy. I don't want this person on my agency. And the other half were like, well, this is a person who's really looking at new tech. They're trying to solve solutions in a new way. I actually think this is a mark for them, not against them. And so even in that kind of micro example, the group was split on kind of the use of AI. Now, this wasn't for client work, but I think the same holds true. So it does kind of surprise me, but I think the 100% is maybe what causes even more of that split. Because I think if we maybe asked it a different way, like it would be nearly 100% that said AI is going to play some role in our business model going forward, right? But I think there's hesitation to go all in because, you know, we saw this last year in 2023. There was all this hype and buzz about ChatGPT. And now what do you see? There are some folks in our network who are really going deep, like Dan Sanchez, mutual friend of ours that we've talked about. He's going deep on what are the use cases of ChatGPT or this AI tool versus this one. What are the things you need to actually do? So I think some of the hype has kind of faded. And now the people who are going deep are going to kind of emerge as the leaders in showing us all how to grapple with the implications of this new tech, let alone just the use cases. Like, what are the unintended consequences that are going to happen and all those sorts of things. So I think part of it is the unknown, and part of it is maybe the way we ask that question of 100% all in on AI. Because I think we did a webinar in our Agency Life series, I think November or December of last year. We had some agencies on talking about how they were going to use AI, how they have been. And people were leaning in and everybody was asking questions. And so I think, you know, I can't say for sure, but I think 100% of that audience saw AI playing some sort of role in their agency. They just don't know what the heck it's going to look like still, as much as, you know, the buzz has been around for a year plus now.
Right. Yeah. And how you roll AI out within your agency is important. And I did a presentation on it last week, maybe the week before. I can't remember at this point. But like, it is very important. And I've talked within my clients right now, some of their teams are still very put off by just the idea of AI because it's being rolled out in a way where they feel threatened versus the other teams that are empowered by using it and told like, no, I'm not getting rid of you. Like I need you. like it's just another tool for you.
But I think that fear of replacement is real. I mean, I remember being at Partner Day last year at Inbound 2023, and I forget which piece it was. I think it was the AI campaign builder that HubSpot announced at that point. And I was looking around at all the HubSpot solution partner agencies kind of squirming in their chair of like, that takes us 2 weeks to do. But there's two ways to look at that. You look at that and say, okay, now our customers can do that with the click of a button, or Now we can do that with a click of a button, and we can spend 4 days on research and strategy that we didn't have before to make the results better, and to package that up and show that and sell that to the client. Because I think there's a stat on this in the report. Again, there's a lot to it. There's 54 pages of data and insights in the report, but that clients are expecting their agencies to leverage AI to make them more efficient. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not really sold. One, I think know that your clients have an expectation of you using AI, or at least they are expecting you to articulate your approach to AI. So even if you're like, hey, we're using AI for this, we're not using it for content production for this reason or this reason, but we're doing it for automation and, these sorts of use cases, then kind of package that up into a talk track that your whole team can easily say to a client, here's where we stand on AI, here's where we're using it, here's why we're not. Kind of that, what we built, why we built it, and why we love it, right? What's your stance on AI? Why is that stance? And why do you think it's the right one? If you take that same framework we were talking about earlier in presenting something to a client, you can take that same framework in talking about something like AI to your clients as well. So I'm going to steal your framework yet again, Chris, because it was really good from a little bit ago.
I'd recommend everyone take that framework, especially even like in-house marketers, right? If you just, if you can look at something and say, this is what I built, this is why I built it, this is why I love it, before you show your supervisor, manager, right, or a client, like it's only going to be better. If you can't look at something you made and say why you love it, it's probably not worth giving it up, which kind of ties into a thought I had while you were just talking. The other day, I went for a run. I had this thought. I like to think deeply so that I don't think about the pain that I'm feeling on the run. But it was the idea that quality control dictates quantity control. And I think with AI, there's like two different ways of thinking. It's like, okay, I can do more and just get this out much faster and just do the quantity game, but you're going to sacrifice the quality game. AI, for people thinking the other way, it's now this gives you a chance to level up your quality immensely because you're freeing yourself up from having to do some of these menial tasks. Maybe it's even just the brainstorming stage, but now you get to focus on just a super high level of quality and maintain, maybe even if it's the same quantity, it's probably going to be more, still faster because you're leveraging AI that way. But it's like those two distinct ways of thinking. And it's like, this is an opportunity. It's just how you go about it.
Yeah. Case in point, we're working with an agency right now at teamwork.com that's doing some brand stuff for us. I believe it's Stink Studios out of the UK. And I remember in one of their pitch meetings where they were giving us 4 or 5 different directions for a brand campaign we're working on right now. They just happened to mention this AI generated image on this slide, it doesn't look that great, And it was just kind of a throwaway comment. And I was like, instead of a designer having to spend a bunch of time creating these concept graphics to help us visualize, what they could build for us in this brand campaign, they leveraged AI to generate some of those things for the visuals. Guess what? That allowed them more time to do, more time to work on the video scripts, more time to work on the copy, more time to work on the other assets that were really important. But you have to have those things, right? And so that to me was just a real tangible recent example of leveraging AI, not saying, hey, AI is going to replace us as an agency, but using AI to supplement what we're doing and free up more time for what's the key thing we keep talking about here, the more strategic work, and being valued for and investing more time as an agency, building and delivering strategy to your clients, not just deliverables.
Awesome. That feels like a great place to start wrapping. I got 2 more for you. First, what is the one book you would recommend every agency leader reads?
Biggest one that impacted our leadership team while I was at Sweetfish was a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. I always want to go back and forth on his last name, but Traction, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. If you look that up, you should easily be able to find the audio book or the book on Amazon. Recognizing that, hey, there's a difference in leadership the two roles that you need, the visionary versus the integrator, and just giving us things like the level 10 meeting agenda, setting quarterly rocks, and how that rolls up to your annual plan. That was a game changer. So check out Traction.
Awesome. And finally, where can people learn more about you?
Yeah. So obviously teamwork.com, the name of the company, name of the tool is the same as the website. So very easy there. Me personally, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So look me up there, Logan Lyles, Lyles. And check out the podcast, Agency Life. We release every other week. We just had a great episode with Allison Caffrey that I mentioned earlier on the 5 mistakes that actually lead to over servicing. And she did a great job of laying out some of those mistakes. How do you identify them? And how do you preemptively avoid them? So check that one out on Apple or Spotify. If you search Agency Life, it's pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Logan, thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. This was fun.
That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.